Hi, welcome back to my YouTube. I feel like I do the same introduction every time, and every time I say it I go, oh. But yeah, welcome back. So here Ella has kindly planned a 52-week plan of YouTube videos. She said she's sick of me making excuses that I can't think of any ideas on YouTube, so she has made the ideas for me. So I've literally got no excuse now. I've got to get this YouTube on a more regular basis. So today's video, I've just quickly gone through, and I haven't really planned any of this video, but I just thought I'd grab the camera while I've got a little bit. But I've just seen this nice one, and it's overcoming the fear of injecting patients, which I thought, like, Ella, well done, like, great. So I think I'll just have a little chat with you and discuss that, because that is something that you can overcome to a certain extent. So as a new practitioner, if anything, you are more confident when you start, because you haven't dealt with complications, and you know, you've read books or you've done your complications on your course, but you are definitely more confident as the start than you are as you go on. So first of all, in a Botox sense, I'd been Botoxing for about 6 months before I come with my first complication. Now for patients, complications sound like, oh my god, what did you do, did you? But as practitioners, you know, any minor complication is still referred to as a complication. So I'd been injecting for about 6 months. And on the corrugator muscle, you have a very superficial muscle, as practitioners will know, and you have to really be careful about the depth of how you inject into that and how many units you inject into that, or you can get what's called a droopy brow. So what had happened is, I'd been injecting, now I'll be openly and honest, I tell people this all the time now, all my students, I'd been injecting for 6 months without that knowledge. I 100% learned it on my course, and I had 100% heard of it, but there was just that much to learn, and that much in depth, and that much going on, that over the period of me coming home and me starting a clinic and me injecting, it had kind of slipped my mind. So I knew I had like points that would like dosage that I would inject. So I'd just been lucky that me dosage was low on that corrugator muscle for every patient. The depth thing was what threw me. I hadn't took that in. So I'd been injecting for 6 months, which does so because it was 6 months every day. So it shows how unlikely you are to do this even after you've injected too deep. You know, you're still unlucky. Even if you inject too deep, you're still unlucky. It's like 1 in so many thousand patients it will happen to. But what had happened is I'd injected too deep. I think it was too deep. I don't think it was the dosage. It was the patient's first time in Botox, and she was super nervous, and her boyfriend didn't want her to have it, and unfortunately it had happened to her, which is so unfortunate. It's like sod's law. Now there is arguments for, like, patients have gone home and they've lied down within 4 hours, they've put pressure, they've wore a hat and stuff. I'm not a massive believer in that. I do think that in this case and in cases that I've seen, it more or likely is that you've just injected a little bit too deep on that superficial muscle. If we could x-ray all our patients, then it would be amazing, but we don't. So once that had happened to me, I went back to my mentor because I'd never seen it. It was an absolute panic. It was still probably one of the worst days in my, well, worst 2 weeks of my career. Like, I wanted to shut the clinic down. I didn't want to. It actually wasn't that bad in, like, the patient. You can feel it more than you can see it. It feels like a heaviness. She was so understanding. You know, I still treat her now, so it's not a case of there was any animosity between us. You sign a consent form, you'd explain it, but that's another thing. I had not verbally explained it. I only started verbally explaining it after this had happened, not before. So before, they signed a consent form, and as you know, your patients scroll through and they sign the consent form. So now since then, which we're 6 years on now, I verbally tell people on their consultation for the Botox about what can happen, so that you know that you just end up with a script in your head. As a practitioner, you know what I'm talking about. Your aftercare and your pre-care just rolls off your tongue. And I do mention and do explain about this superficial muscle, and how if you do inject it too deep, or you are that unfortunate patient, you can create a droopy brow. Now, I went back to my mentor and I was like, I've done this and I just don't understand why. Like, can I come to your clinic in Wimslow? Can I come to your clinic and can I just watch it all day? Because there's something. And then he'd said, well, it's the corrugator muscle, you've put too much dosage in, I think he thought it was. And I was like, no, because I go off the same dosage every time. He was like, right, well, you've injected too deep, or the patient's gone and lied down, or they've put pressure on after they've had it done. So when he said that, it just clicked in my head, and I just went too deep, because I'd heard that before, I'd learned it, I hadn't taken that away with me. I just took the dosage away, and I just took the technique but that superficial muscle, you've got to go superficial. I hadn't taken that away, and as soon as he said it, it just clicked in my head, and I went, that's what I've done. And I just knew, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I was 6 months into my career, I'm not supposed to know everything, and this is what I say to students when I'm teaching them now. The best mistake I made was that mistake, because 6 years on, I've never done it again. I learned something from it. It could have happened. I could have just been so lucky, and it could have happened 3 years into my career. I learned it at 6 months, and you do. When you see practitioners and they talk about, like, I haven't done a complication, or not my work, or not lumpy lips, not me, or you just haven't been injecting long enough. And if you believe that you, as a practitioner, that makes you a better practitioner because you haven't dealt with slight complications, that's not true. If anything, you need that experience to get through it. So yeah, so we prescribed her an eye drop, and I actually refunded her. Now, refunding is there's two ways to the argument with refunding, because you are admitting that you've done something wrong, where we never actually know what happens. It's just unfortunate, and you sign for it, and it's on the consent. The only reason why I refunded, one, is because that's just me, and that's what I would do at this time. I wouldn't now through experience, but the only reason why I did refunds is because I knew I had not explained this on verbally. So she'd consented to it, and she'd signed a consent form, but I knew that I hadn't verbally told her about this, because that wasn't on my script, that wasn't there. So I knew from that day moving forward, every patient, I was going to verbally tell them. I was going to say, listen, this is what can happen, blah blah blah. So yeah, so refunded that, and as I say, I still treat her to this day. She comes in, she loves Botox. I didn't put her off Botox. We've got a great relationship, and I was just open and honest with her. And she also knew I was a new injector, she knew that. So there was like an understanding. It was unfortunate, and it was a terrible time at the time, but it was a great learning curve in my career. So once I dealt with that, in that complication, that was something that you dread and dread and dread as an injector. You should feel like this. If you don't, you're in the wrong job. But every single time you put a needle to someone's face, you have that nervousness. It gets easier and it goes away, but you care. So you should get that, like, a little bit of anxiety and that little bit of perfectionist in you, because that's, comes with injecting somebody's face. So once I dealt with that, the massive learning thing as well was that my business still opened the next day. She didn't slander me all over Facebook. She didn't tell a million people about me and that I was a bad injector. I still inject her to this day, like, she didn't. And it was a learning thing, and it was something that patients come to you with the understanding that there can be things can slightly happen, you know, there can be things, nothing is permanent what we do, which is a massive thing, but there can be these little slight complications and slight, you know, allergic reaction, or, you know, acute swelling where they just swell, and there is going to be things in the industry that, and it's how you deal with it. If you were to go, well, you must have lied down, no, you must have went to yoga, no, you know what you've done, you've washed your face and you've put too much fat. If you're to go to that blame on them, that's when, you know, you're gonna lose the relationship with the patient, because all that patient's going to do is going to go and speak to someone else who does it, and they're going to be open and honest and go, I think she's just injected a little bit too deep, I think you're more superficial than she's learnt in textbook, and she's just injected too deep. And they're going to go, so why is she trying to blame me? Also, you know, it is just as traumatic to you as it is to them. Like, honestly, it is. Like, I remember, like, I didn't sleep for days. I didn't want to look at my phone. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to, and like, to people who don't know what this is, it's making it sound like this is a massive complication, like life or death. This is literally just a heaviness to the brow. It just feels a little bit heavy. It feels like a pressure, and it goes within 2 weeks, and then your Botox is perfect. And then, so it's not even like she looked distorted or she anything. It was just, she literally was like, I can just feel, it's just driving me insane, and it just feels very heavy on one side. But yeah, but for them, it's all about trusting that, okay, this has happened, but they've dealt with it in the correct way. They, you know, later on in my career, I've dealt with other practitioners' complications. We all have. I'm not trying to like be the hero here. Everybody has dealt, there's probably practitioners that I've dealt with something that I've done, maybe a lump or something, and somebody's gone something else. It's just the industry. But I've dealt with practitioners and that patient cannot get hold of them because they've been blocked. Like, to me, that's awful. Like, it's just awful. You would rather say, listen, I'm not experienced in this, I've not dealt with this before, I'm going to get a second opinion. That's absolutely fine to do that. That is perfectly fine. And then you would just contact someone and be like, listen, this is what's happened. 9 times out of 10, that practitioner has been through it. It's happened to them. I've actually got a practitioner that I sistered up with. So if I'm on holiday, my aftercare goes to her number, and same, so that you don't get that. Another thing I will discuss is injecting and then going on holiday. So yeah, so that's one way. That's one way of getting over it, is actually dealing with it, and then you realise, and it's not as bad as it initially was in your head, and everything is okay, and you've still got a business, and you've still got a reputation, and if anything, you've actually got a better reputation because of the way you've dealt with it, and you've been hands-on, and you've been honest, and you've not panicked, and, you know, made a mockery of this patient, like trying to like put the blame on her. There's no blame anywhere. It's just unfortunate, and sometimes it happens. So that's one way of dealing with it, in like, you have to really, you know, you have to know that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to come across complications. It's about knowing that when that happens, you know how to deal with it, and you're going to deal with it in an open and honest and respectful way, not trying to push the blame somewhere else, because that's just not going to work in this industry. So then another way of complications with dermal filler is, obviously, as you all know, I am massively big on cannula. I do not inject a needle into lips anymore. And this is what I'm saying. At the beginning of my career, I was much more confident in this, and I used to do the Cupid's bow with a needle, like, and I was fine with it. It was, and then as the years went on, and as the experience and as the ratio of patients doubled and tripled, it just started to get like, it just wasn't worth the hassle to me, because my patients weren't after that squared, pointed, perfection, Instagram lips that the needle creates. They weren't after Russian lips, they just wanted a nice soft and plumping, and that's why me and my patients are perfect for each other, because that's all I want to do. I will openly admit I probably cannot do a Russian lip. I could probably have a go, but I would be so scared. I would be panicking the whole way through. So for me, I just wouldn't put myself through it. I just don't want to. My patients don't want it, and I don't want to do it. So another way of obviously getting over the anxiety of injecting is by using safer methods where you can. Like, guys, in my opinion, and to my students, you should never be injecting a nose with a needle. Why? Like, why are you putting that patient through that risk? It's just not something I'd do. Possibly I'd go very superficial with a insulin needle at the thing. Very unlikely I would, but yeah. So using a cannula as and when you can. If you don't know, I do training on cannula, so if you are needle trained only and you are interested in cannula, you know, give us a shout. One of my main courses is cannula training. So yeah, so one way of dealing with the complication, with the anxiety of complications, is knowing that the ratio of patients you're going to do is the ratio of complications. So my mentor told me this one thing once, and it has stuck with me always, and he is so right. So we were discussing how different the price ranges are in my area. So obviously we have my prices and we have patients. So my 1 mil of lips is £185. Now 1 mil of lips can range up to 60 quid to 100 to 180, like it ranges. So we were discussing how do you compete with the cheaper prices, and the thing is that you don't, because you've got to get business smart here. Why would you want to do 3 £60 lips where there's 3 complications that can be had, or do 1? Why? It doesn't make sense to me. So for me, when I see cheaper prices and a conveyor belt of patients going through your diary, it's just red flags to me, because every one of them patients is a possible complication. So why do you want 5 possible complications for the same price as 1? I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. That's all I'm going to say on that one, because pricing can be a bit tricky, but you know, get business smart, think about it. I just don't know why it doesn't. Just because you've got 1,000 patients booked in this week doesn't mean that you're making just as much money as somebody who's got 20. It's just that they've priced their pricing, and they're not overpricing. I'm not overpricing. I'm dead open and honest. People know what filler I use, they know what I pay, you know that the extras, the cannula, the sterilisation pouches. Like, I'm not making mega money, but what I'm not doing is over complicating my books for more complications. Like, honestly, think about it, because it was the best thing he probably taught me, because I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. So yeah, so they're just like little tips. But then another thing I do want to add is just learn. Just honestly, just learn. I'm probably not the only one, but on my phone, I'm gonna sound like an absolute freak now. Can I say this? I'm gonna sound mad. I have a Google image on my phone and on my computer of somebody who's died, and they've opened up, so you can see. This sounds really bad. So you can actually see the facial artery, and you can see the little tiny, and like, look, I promise you, if you've seen how superficial the little tiny facial arteries to live, you would not be going nowhere near it. But yeah, so like, just do the over research. So I was 4 years in, and I went back and done my MVQ, anatomy, physiology, pathology. Now a lot of that was more like a nursing side to it, so I had to learn about the respiratory cardiac, there was digestive, there was reproduction, your cells, so it wasn't even actually generally about head and neck anatomy. There was obviously muscles, there was all that in it, but it was just I just opened a much massive more knowledge of the human body and of what we are like, I'm a nerd and I love anything like this. Now I'm going more onto the science side, so I've actually going back to do my chemistry and biology this year, hopefully if I get accepted in May, because now I'm more onto that side. I want to learn that side, but that's the way I am. But there is unbelievable amount of school of YouTube videos on the internet, like every day just learns, every day just go on it as a new injector and just type in how to deal with droopy brow, tips on nose. Honestly, there is an open world out there on school of YouTube that you can just learn, that you don't have to pay anyone. Another thing is being honest to other practitioners. So I had a practitioner who messaged me and was like, Ash, can you help me? I don't know whether I've caused a droopy brow, I've injected here, blah blah blah, and it was just a big bruise, it was a hematoma. And I was like, babe, you haven't, because I know, because I have, and I know the signs and symptoms, and she can't feel a heaviness, and she can't, and she was like, oh wow, have you? And I was like, yeah, like, and then that opens it up to being more honest and just more relatable, to where we all don't be like, oh, I haven't done that, I haven't done, yous have caused a lump in the lips, you know, if yous haven't caused a heaviness in the eyebrow, I'm sorry, but it's coming. So learn how to deal with it, because it's coming, because it just happens in our industry. It's just one of them things. I'm not talking about like major complications like necrosis and, you know, stuff like that. I'm just talking about these minor things that happen to. I went and sat in a seminar and there was, say, 20 to 40 massive practitioners in the industry, huge practitioners, the best in the business in the UK, all in this seminar. And the person said, put your hands up if you have caused an occlusion. And I'm telling you, there was a lot of hands that went up. There was a lot of hands that went up, because it weren't about they caused the occlusion, it was about that they knew how to deal with the complication. So it was just because I was a new practitioner. Raise your hands if you've done an itosis. Nearly every hand went up, like, and that's what I mean, like, it's gonna happen. So it's about not having a major fear on trying to stop it from happening, having a major fear on knowing that you know how to deal with it and you know what to do. That's how you get over the anxiety of injecting. It is experience. It is literally experience. Other little tips that I've got that I've done over the year, which just helps me because I am an over anxious person and I am an over planner, is I don't inject 3 days before I go on holiday. As a rule, it doesn't get put in the diary. I don't inject on Christmas Eve, I don't inject on bank holidays. If I am closed and I know that I am not reachable, I don't inject. Now, I'm in a more comfortable position where I don't, you know, at the beginning I was probably injecting because I was going out that weekend and I wanted the money for the week, a new outfit type of thing, so I understand, but it's not worth it, it's not worth the stress. So I don't inject 3 days before I go on holiday, and then, as I've just mentioned, a sister with another practitioner. And when I'm on holiday, my automatic message says, if you are contacting over 72 hours, a treatment that was done in 72 hours, please contact, and the emergency number is hers, and I do the same for her when she's on holiday. That is great, and that is something that every practitioner should have, a sister practitioner who you are confident and know, Ash, I know that you're on holiday, but this has happened, but I've dealt with it, blah blah, and you can be like, thank you so much, instead of looking on your Instagram and the girl is contacting you and messaging and blowing up your phone, and you've been on the beach all day, and then she's gone on Google, then she's got in contact with the people that I won't even mention that we all know, that like, and then they've put it all over the internet that you've gone on holiday, you've injected. Like, just cover your backs, because over planning is better than under planning. Another thing is that my automatic messages, so my Instagram and my WhatsApp have an automatic message on, just to say, like, we are closed now, blah blah blah, and if you are contacting over a treatment done in the last 72 hours, please refer to your aftercare, because the number is on it, and then the aftercare has my private number on it. So my aftercare goes through email. I don't know how you do it, but mine is all automatically. Once they leave the clinic, they get an email with their aftercare on, because I use Aesthetics Nurse software. Like, if you're not using it, get on it, it's so good. So it goes on there. So on that aftercare is my private number. So over weekends, because you do this, you get this. So you've injected on Friday, and you're not really liking the look of this bruise that's come up. You've done all your checks, you've checked the cap refill, you've checked, and you're like, it's just going to be a bruise, it's just going to be a bruise. Now, as you all know, that patient leaves, and you have to keep going to yourself, it's a bruise, it's a bruise. Then you'll get on your phone and you'll zoom in on the after picture. No, it's 100% it's a bruise. Then you'll get home and you'll go, I'm not gonna have that glass of wine just in case. I know it's a bruise, but it just in case it's not a bruise. Then Saturday morning, you don't want to look at the work phone. You've got your stomach's churning, you think they're gonna be like, boom. It never happens, touch wood, it never happens, and it probably never will happen, but you go through them motions. So I, for 4 years, dealt with them motions most nights, to a point where I actually had a conversation with my mum and said, I don't think mentally I am strong enough to do this job, because the pressure of the aftercare and the anxiety of some complication happening is taking over my life. It's too much for me, mum. I'm so scared of something happening that I don't mentally think that I can deal with it. And that was one of the biggest things, was because I just hadn't dealt with it. And once I had, I was like, wow, it's not even that. It's not even as bad as in your head you think. But so what I do now is, I have a clinic coordinator, Ella, who's of all met her, who has been in the clinic. So I pay her of a Sunday and a Monday, because we're closed. She gets a wage for a little, I think it's half an hour or an hour, that's included in her weekly wage, to just check that work phone. She doesn't have to take it nowhere, she doesn't have to be on it, she doesn't have to, but all she does is, I know that every single day that work phone is getting a little check. It's just getting a little, like, Ella, to be honest with you, she ends up booking people in. She just does a little bit of social media and stuff because she's dead good. But all I'm paying her for is that 24-hour contact line is being checked. But then other than that, because I still can't, because what if she doesn't check it? What if the phone's dead? What if the thing going? My aftercare has my private number, so I know as a patient, you're gonna get home, you're not gonna like the look of this bruise, you're gonna Instagram first, you're not gonna get an Instagram, you're gonna text the phone, and then if you don't, you're gonna look at the aftercare and you're gonna go, oh, there's Ashley's number, and then that is my 24-hour like contact number that you can phone. And what that does is, in 6 years, touch wood, nobody has contacted me, but what that does is, that is a process in my mind that I can go through, that I know, Ashley, you're fine, you can enjoy your weekends, because there's steps that you've put in, so that if that does happen, there's no way that that patient is just not getting answered. So that is, and if I'm away and I'm on holiday, I know that I've covered me back with my sister practitioner. I know that I haven't injected 3 days before, so if any complication was to arise, it's within 72 hours. So if I've injected you on the Thursday, I go on holiday on the Friday, I'd have heard from you already. So it is just about having knowledge is the biggest thing. It's about knowing, knowing. Now look, I still have to refer back to the names. The names are massive, they're huge. Like, I'll still have to look over there and then say, oh yeah, the facial angular artery. So I still have to look at that, but it's knowing where they are and what they're leading to. It's having a knowledge of your depth. So, on your planes, with the cannula, you can feel it with the plane. With the needle, it's knowing, you're on the bone, it's knowing stuff like that. With the Botox, it's knowing that that's a superficial muscle, so you should be injecting the tip of the needle, low dose it, just certain little things like that. It is backing yourself up and backing yourself up and then backing yourself up again. Worst case scenario, it 3 times in your head, and then do it and do it, and then put protocols in your business that worst case scenario, it's still going to be sorted, like the 24-hour aftercare, like the paying the Ella an extra whatever to check the phone over weekend, like the sister doing that. And then also, it's also just learn yourself and just, you know, have a look and research and just learn about complications. If you physically haven't gone through them, find videos on them, speak to practitioners on them, go on a complication course, and just learn yourself so that when you actually do come across it, you do know. Another funny story is a patient diagnosed herself throughout the night of a hematoma, to a point where she was absolutely stressing, and by the time I got in at 9 o'clock and checked the phone, she was like Ashley, I think I've got a hematoma, like I've looked on Google, and I was like, that's just a different word for a bruise, like it's just a bruise, like, and she come in and it was just a bruise. So like, it's like knowing, you know, hematomas are another complication that, like, you just when you just get that big bruise coming up and you're just like, oh. But for me, I've got ice globes in the fridge, I've got arnicare on thing, you know, you will all have it. I caused the hematoma once and didn't put pressure on it and didn't put a cold on it, so it spread right over the face. So then the second time I spoke to my mentor and I was like, when you've got that hematoma and it's coming to a lump, and he was like, as long as you've checked the cap refill and you know, you put pressure on, you put cold, and I was like, right, okay. So yeah, it's just knowing how to deal with complications so that when complications do arise, because they are going to arise, you know what you're going to do. It's not planning for not having a complication, it's planning on how you're going to deal with the complication. That is how you get over the anxiety of injecting. But guys, I'm going to tell you, it's been 6 years. I've been injecting every day for 6 years, nearly every day for 6 years, and I still get that hot feeling at the back of my neck sometimes. I still get that where I feel like I can't breathe when I'm looking at something. I still get that where I have to go through the motions, I have to sit myself down and talk through it, and until you've done that 2-week review, that at the back of your mind and you're thinking it. And I get that because I care. Because I'm a good practitioner and I care about my job more than I care about the money. The money is probably gone and spent, and I'm still thinking about your results. I'm still thinking about, because that's just the way I am, and that's how you should be in the industry, is you should care. So you've got to retrain your mind, like, yeah, you're anxious, but you're anxious because you care. You're not anxious because you're ill-equipped, or you're anxious because you don't know what you're doing. You're anxious, this anxiety is because you care as a practitioner about that patient. I caused a bruise the other day doing someone's Botox, and I knew they were going to Venice, and I was devastated, because I was like, every outfit she's gonna have on, she's gonna have this bruise now, like, you know, like, just stuff like that. Like, I was like, I think it was like the Thursday, and I was zooming into her pictures in Venice to look to see how big the bruise was. Like, you're just gonna get it, you're gonna get it. But yeah, I hope this video is give you little tips and tricks, and also just like a reference and just like a knowledge that you're not the only one. We all go through it. Some people aren't as open and honest as me. You know, some people will claim that they've never caused a complication, never seen one, and just badmouth other practitioners that have. Allow them to do that, but don't you be that practitioner. Know that we're in an industry that you are going to get little slight complications. Learn how to deal with the complications, learn how to digest the complication and not refer to it as, now I'm a bad practitioner, I've done something wrong. You haven't done something wrong. Everybody is different. Every vessel, every blood, every human body that we inject is different, and they can react differently. You can do exactly the same technique to 10 different patients, and 10 different patients will get a different result. It's just what happens. So just learn yourself, educate yourself, take a deep breath, just breathe, and know that nothing that we do is permanent. Nothing. So as long as you're equipped and you're skilled and you know that you are doing right by this patient, and you are doing treatments because they are a treatment that they need and not a treatment that you want to, you know, gain money and benefit from, then you are a good practitioner. And if you've watched this video and you've gone through all the emotions like me, and you've laughed and gone, oh my god, that's me, then at least you know that you're not alone and you are a good practitioner, because we care. Enjoy your day, guys, and thank you for watching my YouTube.